Thanks so much for being here today. I am Dr. Lewis, Director of Graduate Programs here at the University of Michigan-Flint. Really excited to have you here today. And as always, I am excited that we're going to be talking about a really important topic because as you go through graduate school, you definitely are going to be doing a lot of juggling. There is a lot of things that you are going to be tossing in the air and you're going to be trying to keep going. And balancing all of that as you're going through graduate school is something that all of us that have gone through graduate school before have had to work through. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we fail, and that's okay as long as you learn along the way. And today we've got Matthew Oxy with us again, and Matthew is one of our counselors in our CAPS office. And I love our partnership with CAPS because we always talk about amazing topics that will help all of us to be able to learn something a little bit new. So I'm going to turn it over to him to walk us through and talk to us about this important topic. Thanks, Matt.
Excellent. Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me again, Dr. Lewis. Hello. Like Dr. Lewis said, my name is Matthew Oxy. I'm a licensed professional counselor with the Counseling and Psychological Services, the CAPS department here at U of M-Flint. I do, like I said, the how does that make you feel therapy oftentimes. Today, we are going to talk about how to multitask and stabilize while in graduate school through effective self-care strategies, time management tactics, and ways you can get involved both on campus and within your own communities to help promote your own well-being. So a couple disclaimers beforehand. This is not going to be direct therapeutic advice. I advise if this is something you're seeking, you can either find services at CAPS, which we'll talk about here soon, or services within a community, or you're already connected. But just as a little word of advice, this is not like formal therapeutic advice. The next thing, this lecture may not be a full hour. I like public speaking. I'm very good at it, but I'm also kind of a fast talker. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to shout them out in the chat and I will get to them. Dr. Lewis, you as well. If you have anything, please let me know. But I guess before we really get started, I want to start with something kind of controversial. You guys might not be aware of this, right? Grad school can be stressful. Shocking, I know. But it's important to recognize this before we get too deep into the nitty-gritty of what we want to talk about with multitasking here. So the types of stressors graduate students face. I've got my speaker notes down here. So if it looks like I'm not looking at the screen, I've got my speaker notes down here. I'm not checking my phone or anything like that. So correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Lewis, but University of Michigan-Flint currently offers over 30 graduate programs
Actually,
across
I was going to say
different
over 50.
over 50. Wow. I was looking at the course selector, not the course selector, the major selection thing, like the academic programs, and I only counted about 35.
Nope,
So
we got over 50.
we've got over 50. So that furthers the point that across the University of Michigan-Flint campus, graduate students are a significant portion of our university's makeup, right? So this is something that's important to talk about. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you're likely a graduate student at U of M-Flint, so you understand that. Now, common sources of student stress. Someday I'll be able to get that combination of words out of my mouth. Now, there is actually an index for this. There is the Graduate Stress Inventory. It was made in the mid-90s and it's been revised over the decades. And it asks a series of questions related to environmental, academic, and then family and monetary stressors as well. And you can see those are listed here: academic stress, family issues, interpersonal relationships, and financial stress. Additionally, though, a little bit more specific to graduate school, or I guess in addition to the GSI, we have career, right? Career placement, career planning. What are we going to do after graduate school, as well as research and teaching. I know it is a very important part of some programs that you write a thesis, for example, or you have teaching experience, or you're expected to teach or run a class or a lab, right? Just depends on what you're studying. There are other problems that are more broad that can amplify some of these stressors, right? Other concerns that might be totally unrelated to graduate school, but can make it harder to get through, right? Poor physical health or disabilities, right? If we talk about something like a physical disability, chronic pain, and even sometimes increased fatigue, all of these things can, as we've said, amplify the stress of what is above. Mental and emotional struggles, right? Pre-existing mental health struggles or mental health diagnoses, or mental health struggles and diagnoses that crop up as a result of graduate school. We'll talk about that here on the next slide, so I don't want to get too much into the mental and emotional stuff right this second. Sleep can amplify issues. How many of us don't get enough sleep in graduate school? I'm sure quite a few of us, right? That constant, seemingly chronic exhaustion can lead to, again, further feelings of stress. And then finally, age. This one, while empirical, is also a little more anecdotal. Age can play a role in increasing the potency of some of these stressors, right? I want you to think about it. Older students are more likely to be a little bit more established. What I mean by that is you probably already have a family, you already have a career you might be juggling, and you might have yourself embedded in other parts of your communities, for example, on top of graduate school, whereas someone coming right out of undergrad may not have those exact same stressors, right? Now, moving on to our next slide here. We've got the what. Now let's talk about the how. How stress affects graduate student. So before we really get into this, there is a plethora of research on graduate student stress. However, given that's not the topic of the presentation, I'm just going to give you some of the highlights. And I promise the rest of the presentation is just a little bit more uplifting than this right here. So graduate students report higher rates of stress than undergraduate students. The 2013 study by Wyatt and Oswald showed that while undergraduate students show significantly higher rates of mental illness, graduate students report higher rates of stress. This stress comes from many of the aforementioned stressors that we just talked about, right? There are a lot of expectations put on graduate students. Graduate students are 6 times more likely to experience anxiety and depression. And those who experience anxiety and depression also report a poor work-life balance. Now, I know that sounds contradictory to the last point. This study done in 2018 found that graduate students are 2 to 6 times more likely to experience anxiety and depression during grad school, right? This can lead to that increased anxiety, increase or decreased work-life balance. My words are all over the place today. I do sincerely apologize. So despite grad or undergraduate students reporting higher rates of mental health struggles, graduate students are still more likely to experience those mental health struggles as well throughout their time. And finally, many multicultural elements play a role in some of the stress as well. Everything is multicultural, right? And when we look at some of these elements, we find that graduate students who face particularly racial discrimination and financial distress have higher rates of anxiety and depression during graduate school. These findings persist with racial discrimination and financial stress. These findings persist even when students have strong familial and social support. So if faced with, racial injustice or like heavy financial pressure, regardless of a social or familial support network, you'll still see some of these issues crop up. Additionally, students who reported as LGBTQ had higher odds of anxiety and depression on an individual level. And students who reported financial distress were way more prone, particularly to anxiety. In this study done in 2021, financial stress was a large indicator of anxiety. So we've done the fun part. I think I have another bullet point there. Women and international students tend to show heightened distress in graduate school as well. We've done the super fun part. We have established that graduate school is stressful. We know what stresses students out. We know how that stress affects you guys on both the macro and the micro level. However, like I said, identifying stress is not the goal of this lecture. It's the foundation for what we kind of want to talk about here, right? The goal is to learn and discuss ways to balance graduate school with everything else. Now, graduate students have kind of a full plate. Again, I'm just full of shocking statements for you guys today. You guys probably did not know that before I said that as graduate students. I have a lot on your plates. What we have examples here on this slide, right? Some examples of things that are make us busy as graduate students. Coursework and exams. I know some graduate programs have exams multiple times a week for multiple weeks in a row. Some graduate programs here on campus even condense, and their hell weeks, for example, are even more jam-packed with exams because instead of the full 16 weeks, it drops to like a 10-week, 12-week program, right? There's teaching and there's researching. As we mentioned, sometimes there is an expectation that you run your own class, or there's an expectation that you're doing research for your thesis, for your final report. Clinical rotations. Behind me, you can't see it particularly well through the windows, but I'm across the river from the White Building, and most of the programs in there, PA, PT, nursing, all require some degree of clinical rotations, some of which are not particularly close to home. Full or part-time jobs, whether you have a 20-hour a week, kind of like flash money job that you do working at a coffee shop, or if you're like my colleague Riley, who is currently enrolled in our social work program here at U of M-Flint and is also working as a CAPS counselor full-time, work can be stressful. Your occupation can add a lot of things for you to do. We talk about expectations. It's a whole another slew of things. Family obligations, this can look a million different ways. This can look like raising children, supporting a partner, supporting your parents if they're older, or navigating life with a chosen family, for example. Family obligations are persistent. Commutes, I feel like this one isn't really talked about as much. Some students, I mean, U of M-Flint is a commuter school. I know we have on-campus residencies and we offer quite a few remote programs and remote classes, but at its core, U of M-Flint has always been a commuter school. And sometimes those commutes really can add up. Like I said, whether you're going to class or going to a clinical rotation, that's an hour away. If you live here on campus and your clinical rotation is in Ann Arbor down at Michigan Medicine, that's a 2-hour round trip commute you have to take every day, potentially longer. And while the commute itself might not be particularly difficult, US 23 is not a very hard drive, it does take away a lot of time. And it makes some of these other things like researching and managing your family and managing your coursework more difficult because that time you have to do it is now even less because you have to spend 2 hours on the road, for example. And then finally, clubs, professional organizations, or governing bodies within your cohort, right? I know some programs have like a class president, for example, and then you maybe I believe when I was in graduate school, I think it was called Chi Sigma Iota. It was the professional fraternity for counselors, I believe. So, and I was on the board of that. I believe I was the secretary, treasurer. It was one of the things. It was a long time ago. I apologize for not fully remembering. But all of these things are examples of what the average graduate student might be faced with. What do we notice about the examples that were laid out? They look nearly identical to the things that caused us that kind of stress. I know that's kind of obvious, right? When we talk about things being on our plate, they often correlate to being stressful, right? Graduate students are faced with many, if not all of these challenges at the exact same time throughout their programs. I have talked a little bit now about the kind of obvious, stressful balancing act that is graduate school. So let's get into the actual meat and potatoes of the lecture. Let's discuss ways to juggle all of these things, balance all these things, prioritize and manage everything we have here, and potentially more while keeping our heads above water. The 8 dimensions of wellness. If you have been a student at U of M-Flint for any period of time, I am sure you are familiar with this image. The 8 dimensions of wellness are something that University Health and Wellbeing, University Health and Wellness, UHS, they're very big on the 8 dimensions of wellness. And for good reason, honestly. These dimensions, they can help us from a practical sense. The 8 dimensions of wellness can help us categorize some of our concerns and help us recognize where we can grow and also really where we're thriving. They don't just have to be about, oh, what am I lacking? We can look at these 8 dimensions and go, okay, I'm secure in these areas. And that can help, again, further that wellness and foundation. I very briefly want to discuss each of them because I know sometimes these are not discussed. They're just sort of slapped right on the page, and you're just expected to be like, oh, yeah, it's intuitive. It makes sense. And in a lot of ways, it is. So, this is information from both, I believe, University of Michigan, and for the life of me, I can't remember the other website, but you'll see it in the references, what other university I got this information from. So we're just going to go start at the top, going to go clockwise here. Physical, it's the ability to maintain quality of life that helps you get through the activities of the day with ease. Emotional awareness, these are an awareness of thoughts and feelings and responses to daily interactions and events. Environmental wellness is a respect for ourselves, a respect for our community, and a respect for our environment and its surroundings, right? This can be a a love of nature, a love of keeping, our cities clean, for example, like really caring about the quality of our environments that we are in all the time. Financial wellness, knowing how to manage expenses and your relationship with money. This can get difficult in graduate school. Sometimes we have to work a lot. Sometimes graduate school, not even sometimes, a lot of times graduate school is very expensive, and trying to manage living life as a regular adult, quote unquote, and having to pay for graduate school can be very stressful. Occupational wellness, the work you do and how it fulfills you, right? If you're in this point in your academic career, I would hope you're doing something that you love. I love therapy. I went to graduate school at Central Michigan, master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. I love it. I would do therapy for free. I would do it a lot less often, but I would do it for free. I love this job. I think I will do it for the next several decades, right? When we think about occupational wellness, we think about the meaning and the fulfillment we get from what we choose to do with our careers. Social wellness. This is defining and connecting with individuals, groups, and communities as a whole. Social wellness, I mean, humans are social creatures. Enough said, right? Intellectual wellness. This is feeling stimulated and engaged with learning opportunities, both within and outside of school. There are many ways that we can still learn in a non-academic sense. Intellectual wellness kind of pushes us to further that. And finally, spiritual wellness. Spiritual wellness is your understanding of place and purpose and how you make meaning of who you are and what happens to you. Spiritual wellness can be understood in many, many different ways. Again, it changes person to person, but now we have our 8 definitions of the 8 dimensions of wellness. And I want you to keep these in mind throughout the rest of this presentation and think about ways you can apply what you already do, as well as what we will talk about here in a bit, to these dimensions, right? This isn't necessarily a strict homework assignment, just more of a thought experiment. Self-care versus self-soothing. Part of me wants to apologize in advance. This is my soapbox. This is the thing I love talking about. But part of me also doesn't want to, because I think it's great information that you guys all can have and share around as you please. So, self-care versus self-soothing. Self-care, this is, like I said, one of my favorite topics. This will serve as the foundation going forward for the rest of our time together, right? I've got a few more slides after this, but this warrants enough that we want to talk about this quite a bit, right? I want to take some time to lay it out for you. You have probably heard of the importance of self-care, right? Everyone's heard of the importance of self-care. Whether it is a paper, an article, a journal, a review about the importance of self-care and well-being, or self-care and stress reduction, whether it's scholarly and academic, or if it's a 20-second TikTok video raving about the importance of taking time for you, regardless of where you've heard it from, they are correct. Self-care is a crucial part of balancing responsibilities in graduate school and beyond. Because if you are a graduate student, mid 20s, you still got like 70 years left after graduate school is over. So we manage self-care now. This can carry us for a very long time. Here's where I get on my soapbox though. However, our definition of self-care might be a little off. Now, our knee-jerk reaction when we think of self-care is what, right? Watching Netflix, maybe taking a nice bath, finding a little sweet treat, like, self-care, right? I'm doing this for me. This is self-care. These are all fantastic ways to unwind. They're not self-care, right? These activities can be better defined as self-soothing. Now, if you look at the column on the left under self-soothing, they can be defined as activities that help soothe a person during a stressful time. These are, yeah, I'm sure if you guys, wanted to, you could think of half a dozen ways that you guys self-soothe on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, right? This is something that helps you regulate yourself. This helps regulate our stress levels. One of the keys with self-soothing is they're easily accessible and sometimes well established. You don't really have to do anything new or difficult to load up Netflix, or to load up a video game, or to go on a walk, right? A lot of these self-soothing activities don't take a whole lot of effort. And even if you want to try something new, right? These self-soothing activities, for example, it makes it sound so formal. These ways that we relax and unwind, self-soothing, right? They can be learned and practiced even in busy times. You know, there's something like cooking, for example, can be soothing for some people. Working on new recipes, reading new books, playing new games, watching new shows, right? These can be examples of how easy self-soothing can be. And that's part of the beauty of it. It doesn't take a very big barrier to entry. However, self-soothing, if overused, can be deleterious to our health and well-being in graduate school and beyond. So, self-soothing, while absolutely necessary to our overall well-being, like I said, can have some negative effects. I want you to think about a scenario for me. You are very stressed and you say, you know what? I've had a long day. I'm going to watch Netflix for 48 straight hours, right? I'm doing it in the name of self-care. For self-care's sake, I'm going to watch Netflix for 48 straight hours. What do we think happens? What do you think happens when we watch Netflix for 48 straight hours? For starters, you probably haven't eaten much, you probably haven't showered at all, you probably haven't slept very much, you probably haven't gone to the bathroom very much. So, on the most basic physiological level, probably not doing great. Our eyes probably hurt, probably feeling a little atrophied from sitting on the couch or the bed all day long. What's more than that, right? On top of that, you've probably missed a class or two. You've possibly missed work. And you've likely neglected other social and familial responsibilities in the name of self-care, right? Your pets didn't get fed. Your kids didn't get picked up from school. Your professor was never informed about why you didn't go to a lecture. Your manager never found out why you didn't go to work. So now you have a no call, no show, right? I will admit that the example of watching Netflix for 48 straight hours is just a little bit hyperbolic. I get it, right? However, I bring it up because it does a good job of showcasing what mistaking self-soothing for, or how mistaking self-soothing for self-care can be harmful, right? Is doing something like watching Netflix inherently harmful? No, of course not. There are great shows on Netflix and Hulu, or if you're a sports fan, like So NFL Sunday Ticket, for example, or March Madness basketball, these are all totally fine ways to soothe, but it highlights that if overused, they can hurt us, right? All of that said, what is self-care? I like to think of self-care as the framework for proper self-soothing, right? One of the key differences between self-care and self-soothing, the way I like to define it, is that self-care is intentional. What do I mean by that? I say intentional because true self-care is thought out and implemented with a goal in mind, right? So we look on the other column here of this presentation. Self-care is comprised of intentional practices, routines, and structures which are developed over time to better facilitate well-being in however way we feel it necessary. Self-care involves establishing boundaries with yourself and others to create a healthy environment for you to work in. I will use an example of this from my own personal and professional life. I don't have my email on my phone. Don't have my work email on my phone. I know many people, colleagues, even my partner are stressed out of the fact that I don't have my email on my phone. But it's a boundary I have set over the years because despite working a job that at any given moment duty could call and we would have to see to a crisis, nothing so serious is going to come up that I'm not going to get a phone call or a text message. And honestly, when 5 o'clock comes around, I don't want to think about work afterwards. I care about my clients, but I don't want to have that stress following me. An example of a boundary to keep that is to keep email off of my phone, my work email off of my phone, right? These can be far more difficult to implement on the fly. If you guys have something, for example, like your work email or your school email on your phone, and I told you to delete it, would that work? Would that make you feel comfortable? Probably not, right? Not if you've been used to using it for a couple of months or even a couple of years, depending on what program you're in. Intentional self care takes deliberate practice. Intentional self care can be started small and it takes practice. We'll talk about it here very soon, but I'm going to give you an example of what intentional self care can look like. I've written out a little scenario here, so follow me as best you can. Let's say you've had a stressful week of exams, work, and research. You had 2 exams on Wednesday, you had one exam on Thursday, you had 3 8-hour work days throughout the week, and the first draft of your thesis was due by Friday morning. The weekend comes around, and for the first time all semester long, you don't have anything going on. There are no exams on Monday. There are no readings to do. And there are no articles to examine. There's no shifts to clock in for. There's nothing. You truly have nothing to do in the following week. And you decide, you know what? I think I'm going to watch Netflix all weekend long. Just like our friend who watched it for 48 straight hours. I'm going to watch Netflix all weekend long. An example of the intentional approach with self-care in this case involves setting boundaries and establishing some time management, right? You've already done the hard work of clearing your schedule. You've already done the hard work. You've done the exams, you've done the paper, you've done the work, like the actual physical going into work. You've done the hard part. And you've said in advance, my plan for the weekend is to do nothing. You have laid that out even as early as Monday, maybe even the weekend prior. This upcoming weekend, I'm not doing a darn thing. I'm going to watch Netflix all weekend long. So there are no major external expectations at this point that exist for us to neglect, right? We've already established it with ourselves. We've set that boundary. Now, your plan with this whole weekend, you're going to wake up, take a shower on Saturday morning, have a coffee, have a yogurt, feed your cats, and then prepare to get comfy on the couch or the bed for the next like several hours, right? Maybe you're a Lord of the Rings person. You want to watch all the extended editions of Lord of the Rings. That's a very long time commitment. That's a whole weekend's worth of content right there. But you're settled in, you're dug in. You allow yourself to pause when needed, pause your movie, pause your show, pause your game, to use the bathroom, find a little bit of lunch, prep some dinner, care for your animals as needed, right? And I'll add another example. We talked about cooking as a self-soothing method. You make something simple and healthy on Saturday. You make something simple and healthy. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort. It's filling. You like it. And you're doing that because you told yourself you're going to order food on Sunday. You know, thinking about the financial dimension of wellness. You want to order from DoorDash, but DoorDash can be expensive. We'll do it one day. We'll plan our finances around it. We'll plan our meal around it. And that'll be our game plan. We'll eat a little dinner on Saturday and then order something on Sunday. On Sunday evening, take a little bit of time after dinner to prep for the week ahead. Get your clothes ready, get your coffee maker ready for Monday morning, get your laptop ready, put it by the door, get ready to go. And you set yourself a bedtime so you can get to sleep by Monday. I know that one sounds a little corny for adults, right? Set yourself a bedtime. What are you, 7 years old? Set yourself a bedtime. That's part of that intentional timekeeping and that intentional boundary you're setting. I'm not going to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning watching shows, playing games, watching movies. I have things to do in the morning, right? If you're thinking to yourself throughout this whole scenario, didn't you just say watching Netflix for 48 straight hours is bad? You're correct. I did use that example, that rather hyperbolic example, to showcase how watching Netflix for 48 hours can be deleterious to your well-being as a student. However, I want you to think about the differences between these two scenarios. The first served a good purpose. It served good intentions at first, but quickly devolved into neglect of our well-being, right? If we got so overwhelmed throughout the week that we decided we're just going to turn ourselves off for the next 48 hours, in a way, we can appreciate it, right? We're taking time to reset, but if overdone, it causes harm. The second scenario, on the other hand, showed how intentionally planning to do something like that, intentionally planning that weekend. We've set our boundaries, we're keeping time limits, and we've allowed for nearly 2 whole days of self-soothing activities, right? How these intentional pieces can allow for this extended self-soothing while also setting us up for success for a potentially stressful week, right? It sounds similar. In practice, it is very different. I know self-care can be hard. I know implementing these things can be hard, especially when we have our routines that work so well. There are so many external pressures. It's like, you have to focus on me. You have to focus on me right now. You can't look at anything else. You have to pay attention to me right now, right? And at times, it's very easy to feel like we are drowning under these expectations. There are so many at once. It feels like we are drowning under these expectations. I encourage you guys to take a screenshot of this. I'll send these slides to Dr. Lewis later as well. In addition to the recording, I'll have some other links that go in there too. We'll talk about here in a little bit. I encourage you guys to practice self-care. Practice it over and over and over again. It might take a few times to get right. You might find that trying to prep the night before to make your morning a little less stressful doesn't help you at all. You might find that removing email off of your phone, it makes it so much worse, makes your day so much more stressful than it needs to be, not being able to check your email, right? Practice. This is different person to person. Practice being intentional with your time, with your boundaries. Practice being intentional. Intentionality is the key for true self-care. Speaking of time, I would be remiss if I did not talk about time management skills in a lecture like this. It feels a little redundant. You guys are graduate students. I'm not going to sit here and be like, you should get a planner. You should get an app on your phone. You should set yourself reminders. You have been in school, some of you, 20 odd years, right? You know how to keep yourself balanced I guess, when it comes to that kind of time management. But I want to talk about time management and prioritizing tasks, right? Using what we know about self-care from the previous slides, we can work to establish a schedule that allows us to both complete necessary tasks as well as rest and recharge. Now, like I said, this can look different student to student. I will give you an example that I have used in the past in therapeutic situations. What I sometimes tell students to do is to stop studying after a certain time, right? Time management and prioritizing tasks. We have an exam on Friday. Today's Monday, right? As the week progresses, stop studying by a certain time, right? This builds on a point that I will talk about here in a little bit, with assignments taking as long as you give them. But when we practice intentionally, all right, 9 p.m., book is closed. I have 2 hours to do whatever I want for the rest of the night. That does not involve school or studying. That intentionality helps us not only prioritize ourselves, right? We get some free time, we get to unwind a little bit, do something that we've been looking forward to, even if it's just nothing, scrolling on our phone. I could sit here and talk about the negative effects of scrolling on your phone, but I'm also a person who enjoys TikTok and Instagram and am prone to scrolling on my phone after a long and stressful day. It happens, right? But when we set that boundary with ourselves, not only do we prioritize our own well being, we also prioritize the exam. You've got class from, I don't know, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. You're going to get a little food afterwards and you're going to hunker down from 5 to 9 and study. That causes you to prioritize studying effectively. If you've only got 4 hours, it doesn't do you any good to sit there on TikTok because you know you can do that later. I know this varies student to student, like I said, but when we put these kind of limits on these things, and we put that hard time limit, for example, it allows and in a way forces us to get the most out of that study period for this example exam. This leads into my next point, that deadlines can be stressful, but they can provide a great framework for us to work in, an excellent framework. Now, there was a very extensive review done in 2020, and it talked about the impact of stress on graduate students. One of the things it highlighted in this review, I don't remember the paper it found it from, but it showed that some stress can be helpful when completing works, such as working on a thesis for master's or doctoral, right? I believe the proper term is actually eustress. There's the difference between eustress and distress. We're very comfortable with the idea of distress, right? I don't have any time to do homework. I feel very distressed. It's all right there. Sometimes there is eustress. Sometimes these deadlines cause this sort of positive stress in our life. Instructor determined dates for exams and papers can help guide studying and researching. They can help guide that intentional self-care, right? I use the example of the exam. No matter what, it's going to be done on Friday as an example statement. You can apply this to any homework assignment, group project, doctoral thesis, exam, clinical, OSCE, whatever you have to do, right? It's going to get done by Friday. This allows us to work with that intentionality, works with boundaries. Sometimes it involves telling people no. Sorry, guys, I love trivia night. I love my Tuesday night trivia, for example. I can't go tonight. I have a very important paper I have to work on. I'll see you guys next week. We're intentional in what we are and are not doing, right? While prioritizing ways to keep us healthy. I mentioned earlier that assignments can take as long as you give them, right? This was actually said to me by a friend a couple of years ago after we were both long out of school. It may be obvious by the way I'm very kind of casually talking about this topic. I was never the kind of student to work on things really, really, really far in advance. Never was my thing. Always been a last minute kind of guy. Definitely didn't put the finishing touches on this presentation this morning. I would never do that, and I would never tell my lecture group about that. Am I right? But while having a conversation with this friend, they mentioned to me that assignments take as long as you give them. What she meant by that was, let's say I give you a paper due in 2 weeks. If you say, I got to work on it right now, it's due in 2 weeks, I got to work on it right now, you are going to go back to that paper every single day, even when you think you finish it. You're going to go back every day. You're going to try to make changes, and that stress is going to last for 2 whole weeks, right? If you only give it the evening, well, it's Thursday night. I better start that paper I was given 2 weeks ago. The stress is only going to last for the evening. Now, I think both of those examples are a bit extreme. And having lived a lot of my life in the latter, I can tell you that it does get stressful. And that's not the advice I am telling you to do. I am not telling you to put off all of your assignments until the last minute. That's not the best tactic. What I'm saying is these assignments take as long as we give them. So feel free, please utilize your self-care and utilize your self-soothing. I have a quote right below that. It says, it's okay to not, right? It's okay to not do homework for a night. It's okay to take a night off and go to trivia. You've got a huge exam on Friday and you studied Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, throughout the day on Tuesday, you had classes and lectures. It's okay to go to Tuesday night trivia. It's okay to not. Just as it's okay to not partake in things that are a little bit more enjoyable when you have to lock in, as the kids say, and focus on what you have to do, it's okay to not neglect other important pieces like that self-care and that self-soothing that we talked about. This is something that I always express to students who come into my office, right? I always try to mention that it is okay to not. There are so many expectations that sometimes we forget all the things we talked about a couple slides ago, right? If I asked you guys to recount all of the things that were on your plate, does anybody think they could list them all off from memory in order? Probably not. I can't even do that. And I made the presentation. And I have the speaker notes in front of me on a separate window. I could scroll back up and look, and I don't remember off the top of my head. Professors, managers, family members, friends, they may not realize all of the things that are on our plates, despite understanding in a way, yeah, grad students are stressed. They may not know the full extent of it. Only we know truly what each of us are dealing with throughout our time in graduate school. It is okay to not. Now, we have talked about a lot of ways to practice that are a little bit more theoretical, I guess, because they vary so much person to person. And this is not a psychological well-being group. So I'm not trying to, and ask everyone like, so what are your stressors? How can we work it on individually? That's not what I'm talking about. But I want to give you guys some general things that we can engage in here, right? Get involved, get involved, get involved, get physical, right? Join your local or university sponsored sports teams. If you guys are on campus, the U of M-Flint Rec Center and all of its programs are free for all U of M students, even graduate students. They are all free. I don't even know if you need a membership. You just show up with your M card, swipe, and you are good to go, right? Get yourself involved in community wellness practices, right? Join local gyms, join running clubs, join athletic sporting teams, join walking groups. I believe there's actually a walking group at the rec center, funny enough. It might be a community walking group, or might be a student staff walking group. I believe every day, maybe every like Wednesday or Thursday, they walk around. Ask someone at the rec center about that, because I believe that actually does exist here on campus. And you talk about, getting involved with community wellness practices. I don't know if you guys have seen in your email, but Flint does bike tours. There's bike tours all around Flint that talk about the history of the various parts of the city. I know there's one coming up in October of like Haunted Flint. That one sounds like quite a bit of fun. I know some of this stuff isn't always as straightforward, right? We recently had a staff breakfast last weekend. Again, this is a little more anecdotal, a little less empirical, as it were. Dr. Giordano mentioned in our whole DSA gathering that over 50% of graduate students are enrolled in online programs, which means some of you guys might not be on campus at all or ever, right? Riley was actually just telling me that a couple of members of her social work cohort don't even live in Michigan, right? Please don't let that please don't let that discourage you, right? Please don't let that discourage you from getting involved and engaging in campus activities. If you live 2 hours away, I get it. No one wants to drive to Flint for a 4 hour round trip for a 2 hour spin class. Totally understand that, right? But if we're close, don't let that discourage you from getting involved. And don't let it discourage you, your status as a graduate student. Don't let it discourage you from getting involved in other ways too. You might live 2 hours away. You might live in Lansing, Grand Rapids. You might live in the Metro Detroit area. You might be up in the UP. You might be out of state. You can still find a local gym. You can still find a way to involve yourself in community. We'll talk about other ways here. Please don't let it discourage you. Graduate students we want you guys at our activities just as much as other populations of students. Get mental. We've gotten physical, now let's get mental. Let's get emotional. Utilize the available mental health resources both on and off campus. Speaking of shameless self-promotions, the CAPS office here at U of M Flint is free for all U of M Flint students, even graduate students. The only exception is that if you live out of state, we cannot see you. If you are within the state of Michigan and enrolled in classes at the University of Michigan Flint, we offer counseling services that are totally free. I like to joke that that actually makes us the most expensive therapy provider in Genesee County because graduate tuition is way more expensive than outpatient therapy, but it's already included. So if you need to, feel free to come utilize the service as a graduate student. If, say, for example, therapy is not your thing, or maybe you already have a therapist, we have reflection and sensory rooms all over campus. If you guys are on campus, I know specifically for my students over in the white building, it can feel like when you're on the other side of the river, there's no way to get over to the south side. There's no way that we can get to the USEN and CAPS to utilize their wellness resources. We have many of these rooms on campus. We've got one in the library. We've got one in the CAPS office here in the University Center, USEN. And I learned today that we actually have a sensory room in the White Building, room 1209. I've never been there myself, but I've learned about it today. It's on our University Health and Wellness page. Go check it out, right? These rooms help you relax and unwind a little bit. The CAPS office, again, because we're so cool, have a bunch of other wellness resources in addition to our sensory room. We have a biofeedback machine. We have a happy light, as they call it. And we even have a massage chair that literally nobody uses. You guys could book time on our massage chair in CAPS and come use it today if you wanted to. Well, we're almost closed, so maybe not today. But early in the winter at U of M Flint is oftentimes our week of wellness, right? Keep an eye out on your email over the next couple of months to hear about Week of Wellness. In addition to doing a bunch of fun giveaways and things like that, it really is a great environment on campus to promote student well-being throughout those 8 dimensions that we talked about earlier. Speaking of keeping your eyes out for things on campus, get social. Get social with it. Visit Campus Connections for all the latest event updates for both on-campus and online programs. That is the most commercial sounding thing I have said in this entire lecture. And for that, I apologize. This is not a paid advertisement by Campus Connections, right? This is something you can utilize, log into as a U of M Flint student, and get the lowdown on what is happening around campus. There are a lot of great programs that, again, promote wellness that are oftentimes totally free. Finally, when we talk about getting social, connect with your family, friends, and peers. When we have this kind of amount of stress, on our plate that we talked about. We have the stress, we have all of the expectations. It can be a lot. And I know talking about it can be hard as well. Take it from me. Both as someone who both listens to people talk about it and struggled to talk about it myself in graduate school, it can be a lot. Connect with your family, connect with your friends, connect with your peers in class, connect with your cohorts. Even if you guys are all remote, have a game night, right? Connect with one another. As I mentioned earlier, humans are social creatures, and the connection is vital to helping us stay afloat, keeping our heads above water. I want to thank you all so much for coming to this lecture here today. I hope you guys have learned a thing or two about how to kind of balance and manage all of these expectations in graduate school. I hope you guys have learned about the dimensions of wellness. I hope most importantly that you have learned the difference between self-care and self-soothing and how you guys could apply that to your day-to-day lives. And I hope you guys are encouraged to get out and get involved, talk to people on campus or off campus. When I send Dr. Lewis the slides, I'm going to send him some additional links, links to the rec center, links to the CAPS office, links to campus connections, things that you as students can and absolutely should utilize. Remember, they're all free. So like I said, thank you so much. Dr. Lewis, I'm going to turn it back over to you. You can close us out.
Thank you, Matthew. I'll open it up. Any questions for Matthew? And if not, that's okay too, but not seeing.
Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Philip.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
I'm one of the out of state,
Hmm.
but it is amazing of some of the resources that you end up finding that are available at the university. And I mean, it's made me glad to choose the university. So
Yeah.
I'm glad
Well, like I
it got
said,
out there.
unfortunately, as out of state, you couldn't utilize CAP services, but anything else I talked about, right? Any of the particularly like online or remote programming, all free. So feel free to look into it and do, yeah.
Definitely. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming today. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Matthew, for all of this amazing information. We will put this video up on our YouTube page as well as share information out on the slides so that you have that information as well. We will be having additional sessions every month, so watch your email. We will be sending those out, and all of the topics are different for every presentation that we'll be giving. So hope that you can attend those as well. And I wish you all the best as you're moving through your graduate school experience. Thank you so much for your time today and for being here.
Thank you.